Welcome everyone. Today we have with us on I Am Renew a very interesting speaker who's going to talk to us about sustainability and the corporate world. The context for this is a summit which is coming up called Leadership Summit on Global Sustainability and the Corporation, which is being organized by the BML Munjal University. And talking to us about that today is Dr. Pandit. Dr. Pandit, of course, is the Chair of Innovation and Entrepreneurship at BML Munjal. And of course, he's been an expert talking and working a lot in the area of disruptive innovation. So, welcome, Deepak. Dr. Deepak, I hope we have a nice, interesting discussion today.
Thank you, Prasanna. It's a pleasure to be here, and I look forward to our interaction today on this very important topic.
Great. So let me start on a very easy note for you. Why exactly are you doing this specific event at this time? Why did you feel the need for this?
So, BML Munjal University is a new age private university, and we are now 7 years young. We started the Leadership Summit last year. This is the second edition of the Leadership Summit. And in each year, we have themes which are relevant to the times. Innovation and entrepreneurship is very core to the values and culture of the university. And when we were talking about choosing a theme for this year, we realized that whatever we do on the planet, unless we are focusing on sustainability, and this includes what we do as corporations, as startups, as in society, we will not have a future for our next generation. This also is brought home by the Sustainable Development Goals, which were set up and revised in 2015 with a target to achieve them by 2030. So we said we should look at doing a theme which mixes our core values of innovation and entrepreneurship with the long-term vision of having a sustainable planet. And that was the reason why we decided to take up this theme.
Okay. Deepak, we basically noticed in India that, so far most of the talking has been done by the government when it comes to sustainability. We just had the Prime Minister make a slew of commitments at the COP26 summit back in the UK, where he spoke about India achieving net zero by 2070 and many other targets, specifically in the area of renewable energy, that by 2030 we would have 500 gigawatts of renewable energy, and so on and so forth. In that context, why do you think corporates have kind of held back or not been as active in making announcements or in making strong commitments when it comes to sustainability in India so far?
Interesting and important question, and I would invite all the guests and listeners and viewers of this channel to join in on 17th and 18th, because there are a lot of panels which are going to be discussing this very question that you are raising. But my perspective is that, especially in the Indian context, the government controls a large part of our ecosystem in terms of enterprises, production, and supply. The private sector is a very important and a critical part of the overall GDP. And they have a lot of role to play in the making sure that the SDG goals as envisaged by the Prime Minister 2070 emissions are met. But they also have their challenges, both in terms of the resources, technology, and a roadmap. And this is also brought home by the fact that we must look at that the developed world has already taken fruits of the emissions which happened for the last 5 decades or so since the end of the Second World War, and they have grown on the basis of those emissions. So as a developing country, if we were to control those emissions too fast, our growth would be stunted. So a balance has to be brought into this. And I think that is where there is a equilibrium which has to be established. The private sector can and will do more. The government also has to step in, and some bridge support to them, which I think India as a country is also asked and championed for the developing world. And from the government to the private sector in India is also required. And I think we'll see more on that in the coming years.
Okay. But, my argument was basically that, the government is always going to say it's under-resourced, understaffed, and it has to prioritize where it spends its money. Whereas if you look at the top tier of corporates in India, let's call them the Fortune 500 companies in India, you're talking about companies which are definitely much better resourced, better staffed, and they have the resources, and they definitely have today, I think, in some cases, the reasons to kind of do this faster. So my point is, why are we seeing corporates still saying that we will be net zero by 2050? Frankly, because I think anything beyond 2035, 2040, to me sounds unambitious today. I'll just put a context to this. Just 5 years back, when we look at the renewable energy targets that have been achieved today and what has been promised based on that record, they would have been almost unimaginable. What we've seen in solar, for example, is completely out of the ballpark. So, considering the fact that the ground situation has changed so much, why aren't corporates making or reassessing their own targets and committing to more ambitious targets? I mean, that really to me is a little surprising, to be honest.
So, Prasanna, at a broad level, what you have inferred could be viewed, but I think we have to take a more granular view of the situation. Different sectors have to be viewed differently and assessed differently. For example, in sectors where we are not exploiting the earth, or which are not manufacturing focused or mining focused, right? These targets can be met much more easily, and I think more focus by the government and by the corporates is called for. To give you some examples in IT, in supply chain, in the e-commerce area, right? It is much easier for these companies. I won't say it is easy, but it is much easier relatively in comparison to the manufacturing and other sectors for them to achieve these targets. And I think these are the corporation, and India has a large services sector where these are the corporations which should probably be putting in and leading by examples by putting early targets. And the other challenge that we face is that, and which is also true of the supply chain of these companies, which are not very resource intensive in terms of natural resources of the use, natural resources which are mined from the earth. The manufacturing sector is dependent on the evolution of technology, right? So if a particular sector has a technology curve which is now mature, and the dominant paradigm in that sector has accepted the technology which is going to lead to less carbon emission, that sector tends to accelerate. For example, we see in the automotive sector, there is a consensus now that from ICE, which is the internal combustion engine based dominant design, we will shift to the electric vehicle design. And two-wheeler is going to lead that charge, and four-wheeler will follow, right? So we will see that there is a very quick adoption of this, which is going to happen. And the typical adoption of such technology is hockey curve based, which basically means that the initial takeoff is very slow, but the minute the critical mass is met, the curve simply moves up like a hockey stick. So when you refer to the solar and some of those elements, in those sectors, the initial takeoff will always be slow because it's about technology adoption and technology maturity. And once that critical mass is reached, the stick is going to go up, right? Now, industries have to do the research and mature the technologies and be ready when this inflection point happens. So I think that's where a lot of education and a combination between the industry and academia in understanding the various paths which the technologies can take in their industry is required. And we will have these discussions in our summit.
Oh, great. I think since you mentioned education, let's move on to that quickly. You've been an academic, you've been teaching, probably you've sent off thousands of students so far towards their, corporate life or whatever. Do you think, in your experience, students who come by the time they reach your postgraduate level or even undergrad and below that, are they aware enough of the crisis potentially that we face climate-wise? And do you think we need to do more at that level itself in terms of sensitizing them? Would that make a difference?
Prasanna, that's a very critical point. And I think that we have not done enough in that regard. And I won't even say in India, I would view this globally. I think education in sustainability needs to be a part of our curriculum. And it needs to start at the school level. We meet managers, and I think sustainability is a topic which is being dealt at a very, very focused manner at the postgraduate level in the country. And there are projects which are done at the undergraduate level and certain projects even at the school level. But the challenge seems to be that we have not looked at how this will impact the overall growth of the economy if the people who are coming to the industry are not themselves sensitized towards what sustainability means. I was reading a report out of the various factors in terms of soil erosion, in terms of life diversity which is required in our ocean beds and on the planet. In terms of the various SDGs, there are some factors, including emissions, where, and I won't name them, where the planet has reached a stage that they cannot go back to where they were. So our exploitation of the planet's resources has reached a level where even if we try, we cannot restore it to its original form and shape. Now, that may be true for some of those goals, but for a majority of them, we still have the chance. It is only possible when the people who are engaging in them, in corporations, in government, in society, are sensitized at a very early age. And I think I'm glad to say that our summit is a step in that direction. And as I mentioned earlier, we have a focus on innovation and entrepreneurship. And we would like to also focus on sustainable entrepreneurship, where startups also look at sustainable business models.
Yeah. So, as let's hoping for the best, let's assuming that as firms become more focused on sustainability, they shift to more sustainable models. As a organizational expert, what sort of changes do you expect to see happening in firms, within firms, to do all this, and as they do all this?
Okay, so I think this education and changes within firm are correlated, right? So one thing is increasingly organization will need to organize for sustainability. When I say organize for sustainability, it means is they will need to look at departments and functions which could be horizontals across various functional levels, which put in these elements of sustainability in the processes and the material that is used across the organization. The other is they would also need to recruit people with this mindset. And that's a huge impact. They will need to create a culture where the people in the organization feel. So the business models which are emerging would always take into account what is the impact on the planet, on the society, and on our people. So profit part is a given. It's it's the ceteris paribus. All things being equal, we need profit. But the all other things cannot be equal if we are not taking care of the social aspects and the planetary aspects.
Thanks. That sounds quite detailed. So I think we can wrap it up here, and hopefully we'll look forward to your event. You will have a description link to the event registration page in this video. And once again, Dr. Pandit, thanks a lot for your time. We hope to catch up again.
Thank you, Prasanna. And I would like to invite.
Remember, it's on the 17th and 18th of this month, and we have February.
Right.
So,
yeah, thank you. I would like to invite the audience to a session on emerging business models for sustainability, Friday, 18th February, 3:15 p.m. We have 6 panels, and each of the panels are debating very pertinent questions, including the transitioning of the large corporations to sustainability. How do corporations organize for sustainability? The role of culture and learning and development in sustainability, emerging business model, regulation and sustainability, how are regulatory frameworks impacting sustainability, and case studies and learning from peers with regard to CSR initiatives in sustainability. So these 6 panels, 3 on 17th and 3 on 18th, are organized, and I look forward to having your audience join us that day.
That's all comprehensive. Thanks a lot. We'll catch up soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.